Unfortunately, no one is immune from the influence of bad people. A person can give you valuable advice, but these tips can ruin your life. My wife was influenced by bad people who forced her to do the most terrible things. And all for what? To save our marriage? This is crazy. I will destroy them. I first encountered Anastasia at my brother's wedding, amidst a flurry of introductions and pleasantries. The weekend was a whirlwind of social interactions, making it difficult to pinpoint the exact moment we met. However, it seems I left a favorable impression, as my new sister-in-law later informed me during a phone call. After a series of missed connections, I finally mustered the courage to ask her out. My name is Lonnie, and I've never been the most outgoing person. Throughout high school and college, I tended to shy away from romantic pursuits, prioritizing academic achievements instead. I dedicated myself to my studies, earning honors at every level, including my master's degree, which took 3 years to complete while juggling work and evening classes. My expertise lies in facilities management, and I often work remotely from my home office, utilizing internet apps for virtual meetings. When Anastasia entered my life, I was instantly captivated. Despite being overshadowed by her more conventionally attractive sister, Julianne, Anastasia's understated charm and resilience captured my heart. However, her family, particularly her mother and sister, wielded significant influence over her life, making it challenging for her to break free. As someone relatively inexperienced in matters of romance, I felt ill-equipped to assist Anastasia in navigating these familial dynamics. Things progressed rapidly with Anastasia. Following a couple of Saturday night outings, our dates increased to 2 and then 3 times a week. Around 3 months into our relationship, we had the conversation about exclusivity and began to explore intimacy. The memory of that initial night will always remain vivid in my mind. Although neither of us was inexperienced, our nerves and desire for perfection made us appear like newcomers. We became engaged on the first anniversary of our initial date. The opulent celebration of our wedding indicated that I had entered into a wealthy family. Neither of us broached the topic of a prenuptial agreement. Family gatherings have never been a source of enjoyment for me. Jeremy, Anastasia's father, maintained a stoic demeanor. Despite being a highly accomplished engineer, he seldom engaged in conversation. While not overtly impolite, he never made an effort to include me in familial interactions. Consequently, I tended to keep my distance from him, as my presence was solely to accompany Anastasia. In contrast, her mother, Elaine, exuded a different energy. Despite working as a legal assistant, she projected an air of authority akin to a Supreme Court nominee. Elaine seemed to relish speaking and rarely paused for silence. With her father being a lawyer, she displayed a keen interest in my profession, albeit often in a disparaging manner, opting for inquiries that belittled my occupation rather than seeking genuine understanding. Julianne and her husband, Chuck, appeared flawless in the eyes of the family. Chuck held the position of vice president in a publicly traded company, while Julianne served as a regional manager for a clothing chain, both embodying success through their affluent lifestyle and polished appearance. Anastasia, on the other hand, preferred not to cause waves. Despite managing a steakhouse, a role that underutilized her college education in literature, she harbored aspirations of writing poetry. Upon returning home from family events, she made efforts to console me in the face of the disrespect we encountered. It's this gesture alone that prevents me from dreading future family gatherings, eagerly anticipating the indulgent treat that follows. Enduring insults becomes bearable in anticipation of these moments of recompense. Unexpectedly, upon arriving home on Thursday night, I was met by Anastasia clad in a revealing red teddy. "What's the occasion?" I asked. "Nothing special. I just couldn't resist thinking about you." "A girl's entitled to that, right?" Relieved, I replied, "Absolutely." As my pants slipped down my legs, Anastasia guided my hands to the back of her head, encouraging me to thrust into her mouth. I tensed up as she tightened her grip on my buttocks, and soon after, I released into her mouth. After cleaning me up, she led me to our bedroom where she shed her teddy and panties. Her perky breasts still aroused me, and I eagerly pushed her onto the bed, diving between her legs. As her breathing quickened, she urged me to take control. Make love to me, Lonnie. I need you. Anastasia seldom engages in explicit conversation. I can't say it heightened my desire, but it certainly didn't dampen it. She experienced a satisfying climax, and shortly afterward, I pleasured her again. After she tidied up, she disappeared into the kitchen. When she returned with an array of dishes, we savored our recovery time. By the time the food vanished, I was aroused once more. This time, it led to a prolonged, tender lovemaking session, complete with nibbles, whispers, and all the intimate gestures lovers share. We drifted off to sleep past midnight. I woke up Friday morning feeling invigorated. I'm heading out, Anastasia. Any plans for today? Not really. I'll be following soon. Love you. Love you too. Our typical Friday evening routine involves grabbing a meal followed by exploring various activities around town, such as attending a play, going dancing, or occasionally participating in fundraising events. Usually Anastasia arrives home about an hour before me, but tonight her car was absent. Upon entering, everything appeared normal indoors. I checked my phone for any messages or voicemails, but found none. A note on the kitchen counter caught my attention. I'll be returning very late on Sunday night. Always remember I love you. Confusion engulfed my thoughts. There had been no prior discussion of a trip or weekend getaway. I attempted to call Anastasia's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent a text message asking, "Where are you?" I felt myself growing increasingly angry. What kind of marriage allows one partner to vanish without warning or explanation? I reached out to her parents, but if they knew anything, they weren't sharing. Her sister Julienne also claimed ignorance. It's difficult to think clearly when you're furious. What possible justification could there be? I couldn't come up with anything. Desperate for answers, I went to our neighbors, Tom and Sally. Sally, who was close friends with Anastasia, denied knowing anything. I went to the gym and pushed myself on the elliptical machine, trying to calm my racing thoughts. The exercise helped to dissipate my anger, and fatigue began to temper my rage. After a quick shower, I returned to a quiet, dark house. I poured myself a few shots of whiskey, sitting alone in the silent living room. Every scenario playing out in my mind pointed to Anastasia being unfaithful. The intense passion from last night suddenly seemed like a guilt-driven attempt to clear her conscience. I woke up in my recliner around 3 a.m., unsure of when I had fallen asleep. After checking my cell phone and finding nothing new, I took some painkillers to help me get a few more hours of sleep. By Saturday morning, with no calls, texts, or emails received, I decided on a plan of action. I spent about an hour consulting with private investigators until I found an agency that seemed reliable and available. To my surprise, a young woman was standing on my porch. "Good morning, Mr. Dickerson. My name is Renee, and I'm here to install the monitoring devices." I reminded myself to avoid stereotypes as Renee efficiently installed the devices. Despite her appearance, short hair, no makeup, dressed in baggy jeans and a sports bra under her t-shirt, she was competent and had all the necessary tools and gadgets. I reiterated my surveillance expectations to her, though uncertain if she would be involved beyond the installation. At work, one of the tasks that had been put on hold was the comprehensive review of our West Coast facilities system. I held a 1-hour video conference with my boss and the management team from the West Coast. The plans for logistics appeared feasible. I utilized my expense account credit cards to purchase a round-trip ticket. I packed my bags and drove myself to the airport. I requested my boss to keep my whereabouts confidential due to ongoing personal issues. He, being divorced, readily agreed. Upon Anastasia's return late on Sunday, she will discover my note. I may return sooner than expected. I collected my rental car just before midnight on Saturday. Despite my persistent attempts to reach Anastasia, I couldn't get through to her. I accessed the new security system and checked the live feed from the cameras in my house. After reviewing the voice recordings, I found only 2 instances of my home phone ringing. Checking my home voicemail, I discovered that neither caller had left a message. Sunday passed slowly, with my thoughts consumed by Anastasia's mysterious trip, which only served to diminish my respect for her. What kind of fool does she take me for? Does she really believe she can disappear for 2 days and then expect everything to be fine with a kiss and a hug? I feared she might return only to deliver the blow of leaving me, the dreaded, "I'm leaving you" conversation. When I turned on my phone on Monday morning, I finally received confirmation that Anastasia was still alive. It was a text message, devoid of any explanation of her whereabouts or activities, time-stamped shortly after midnight. "Where are you? I missed you and love you." Really? After disappearing for an entire weekend without a word? Is that all she has to say? I chose not to respond to the message and kept my phone on silent. As the day progressed, the growing number of texts and calls made it clear that I hadn't followed the scenario she had imagined. It wasn't until I was settled in my hotel room later that day that I reviewed all of the messages. I attempted to go through the texts and listen to the voicemails in the order they were received. The first message was a voicemail. "Lonnie, I discovered your note. Could you please clarify what you meant?" Then a text arrived. "Your office is unaware of your whereabouts. What's the game you're playing?" Another voicemail came in. "Lonnie, if this is about me being away, you're overreacting. I was only gone for 48 hours. A subsequent text read, "If this is how you want it, fine. I'll wait for your little temper tantrum to subside." A few hours later, "Will you be home for dinner?" After dinner, there was one more text. "I miss you and I love you. At least let me know you're okay." Reflecting on all the messages, I realized there wasn't an ounce of remorse on her part. I certainly wasn't being treated as a loved spouse. I logged in and checked the security footage. There was nothing noteworthy. She arrived shortly after midnight and searched the house for me. Upon noticing my absence in the garage where my car usually parked, she sent a text asking my whereabouts. She discovered my note upon returning from the garage, then proceeded to search my office and closets. Similar to my own futile search for Anastasia previously, she found no clues about what I had taken with me. She left for work at her usual time and returned home around her typical arrival time. The voice recordings contained only a few interesting calls. She called Sally and learned about my unexpected visit. I believe Sally was equally uninformed when Anastasia asked, "Did Lonnie mention where he was going?" Anastasia received a cryptic call on her cell phone. "Hey, not yet. Are you sure about this?" I understand I need to be patient. There were some indecipherable murmurs in the conversation. Overall, there was no compelling reason for me to reach out to Anastasia. Despite struggling to sleep, I must have slept well as I woke up to my alarm. On Tuesday morning, I received a voicemail saying, "Lonnie, I miss you. I love you. When is your bizarre behavior ending?" This was followed by a text apologizing for venting frustration and expressing concern for my well-being. Deciding to prolong her uncertainty, I replied, "I'm okay, but given the tone of our recent exchanges, I'm not planning to return home. I'm switching off my phone for a busy day." Throughout the day, I felt my phone vibrating, but ignored it. Later, in my hotel room after dinner, I decided to engage in my own drama. The first text I received after the initial voicemail was perplexing. "Lonnie, I'm sorry, but I can't discuss it. Can't we move forward?" Did she lose her mind, leaving abruptly and then refusing to talk about it? Finally, a voicemail arrived with a trace of emotion. "I'm sorry you're hurt, but you shouldn't be. Please come home. I miss you. I love you." There were a couple more text messages and a few additional voice memos. I made the decision to proceed with drafting separation papers. She left on Friday, and today being Tuesday, there has been no effort on her part to explain her behavior. Something has triggered a change in her, and I no longer wish to have a wife who behaves in this manner. I reached out to my boss via email to inquire about the divorce attorney he had used. Upon receiving the contact information, I sent an introductory email. I accessed the security system and reviewed the activity log. The only notable deviation from Monday was a brief moment when Anastasia wiped away some tears. There were no suspicious phone calls to address. I sent an email to the private investigators requesting an update. Wednesday morning, upon waking up, I found a solitary text message sent at 2 a.m. waiting for me. "Please return home." I feel incredibly lonely without you. I love you. During lunch, I consulted with the divorce attorney, who assured me he had all necessary documents to initiate the separation process. I specifically requested that the papers be served at home to spare Anastasia any potential embarrassment at her workplace, at least for now. Following another highly productive day at the office, I retired to my hotel room. The private investigator's report painted Anastasia as an exemplary wife, focused on work, handling groceries, and diligently tending to the home without any noteworthy visitors or extended lunch breaks. After negotiating their fees, I struck a deal with the PI and agreed to let Renee, aspiring to be an investigator, intern on my case. After a brief conversation, I tasked Reen with surveilling Anastasia until the end of the following week, much to her delight. Upon reviewing the surveillance footage, I found little of significance, save for one peculiar phone call. I promise to update you once I have more information. He hasn't returned home all week. I'm uncertain when I'll next see him. On Thursday night, as I reviewed the security footage, I observed Anastasia drinking heavily and wandering around the house while muttering, "What have I done?" Instead of receiving the enigmatic call, she initiated it. "Yeah, it's me. He's not here. I'm not sure if he's coming back. What's the plan now, genius? This isn't anything like what you said it would be." Their conversation continued back and forth, but all I could gather was that someone mysterious had persuaded Anastasia to take some action, and now things weren't unfolding as expected. I had no clue who this mystery person was. Anastasia's text messages and voicemails were now filled with emotion, but there was still no indication of who, what, where, and especially why she had vanished for 2 days. I chose not to respond. On Friday night, I was well aware of when the papers were delivered. My phone incessantly buzzed starting at 6 p.m., prompting me to eventually power it off. I decided to gain insight into the situation by reviewing the security footage. Everything appeared normal in the morning. Anastasia seemed lethargic, frequently checking her phone. She sent a text, called my cell, and left her customary morning, "Please come home" message. Anastasia returned from work at her usual time and was in the midst of preparing dinner when the doorbell rang. A middle-aged woman stood at the door. Unfortunately, due to the distance, the audio was too faint to discern their conversation. After closing the door, Anastasia wasted no time in tearing open the envelope and then collapsed to her knees, her hand covering her mouth. Anastasia regained her composure and located her cell phone. She dialed my number multiple times, expressing frustration when I didn't pick up, then ended the calls without leaving a message. She repeated this process about 10 times before composing a lengthy text message and sending it. Meanwhile, I decided to power on my cell phone to read her text. Upon doing so, I discovered messages from Anastasia, her mother, and an unfamiliar number. I located Anastasia's text chain and scrolled back to a message from around 6:30 p.m. "Lonnie, please reconsider. I made a terrible mistake. My mom and sister convinced me that pretending to have an affair would reignite our passion and make you fight for me. I spent those 2 days at my mom's place. I swear I haven't been unfaithful and would never jeopardize our marriage. Please call me. I love you." I read and reread the message, still unable to comprehend the ludicrous scheme she was confessing to. I returned to watching the video. Anastasia was visibly intoxicated, sobbing and slamming her fists on the table. She called both her mother and her sister, pouring out her emotions to them. They arrived within 10 minutes of each other, attempting to comfort her. Julianne interjected, "He's reasonable. Tell him the truth. You can vouch for her, right, Mom?" "Oh no. He called Friday night and I lied to him, saying we didn't know where Anastasia was. I'd know better. He called me, but I claimed ignorance. We'll have to come clean and admit we lied." Anastasia interjected, "Think about it. Would you believe this nonsense?" After 15 minutes, Anastasia exploded, "Just get out. You've ruined my marriage." The pair left sheepishly. Anastasia tried calling me multiple times before rushing to the bathroom to vomit. Sorting through calls and texts, I couldn't believe her mom and Julianne were peddling such nonsense. What kind of delusion were they under to think this plan would ever work? Deciding to confront the situation, I sent a text. Anastasia, your version of the truth means nothing to me. My perception of events is all that matters. I hope your time with your lovers was worth it. If I can't move past this in 90 days, as stipulated in the separation agreement, I will file for divorce. Having struggled to drift off to sleep, I found Saturday morning arriving late. It wasn't until 9 a.m. that I finally got out of bed. After showering, shaving, and dressing casually, I made my way to the cafe to indulge in the weekend special. While there, I sifted through and deleted some texts. Finding that there was no new ground being covered, all 3 messages stuck to their narrative about attempting to make me jealous, which I found astonishing. Did I truly want a wife who would resort to such tactics? The emotional voicemail from Anastasia weighed heavily on my mind. I could sense her anguish as she seemed to come to terms with the pain she had caused. Following breakfast, I sat in the park, attempting to devise a plan. Eventually, I decided to call Anastasia. "Lonnie, please don't leave me," she pleaded. "Anastasia, slow down. How about starting with, 'Good morning, dear'?" "Good morning, dear. I'm so relieved you called. Please believe me, I don't have a lover and never did." "Well, dear, you wanted me to believe you did, and now I do. But it's too soon for me to trust that you don't. It's possible you and your family concocted this odd story to cover up your affair." She gasped. "But oh God, no, that's not true. Please believe me." "What do I need to do?" "Anastasia, you initiated this. I refuse to remain married to a wife who cheats with a lover. Reach out to me when you believe you can regain my trust. We'll talk later." I ended the call without waiting for a response, leaving my phone on vibrate. After a day of browsing swap meets and garage sales, I enjoyed a barbecue dinner and returned to my hotel room. Messages from Elaine, Julianne, and Anastasia bombarded my phone. Eventually, one of Anastasia's messages caught my eye. Anastasia proposed, "I'm willing to undergo a polygraph test if you think it will help." After contemplating for a few hours, I replied, "I think that's a good idea. I should be back home by next Saturday and would prefer to be present." "Thank you, thank you, thank you," she responded. "I'll arrange it, and just so you know, I'm confident I'll pass. My only mistake was listening to my mother and sister." Subsequently, she continued with her suggestions. "I'll schedule an appointment for STD testing. Although I've only been intimate with you, I want to address any doubts you may have. This week has been a wake-up call for me. I'm considering seeking a marriage counselor to break free from my family's influence. Have the lawyer prepare a postnuptial agreement." I found myself in agreement with her suggestions, and by the time I went to bed, I was beginning to believe her. Upon waking up, I resolved to take an active role. Even though she hadn't requested it, I decided to volunteer for all the tests as well. I didn't want her to suspect that I was seeking revenge sex. The idea of the polygraph seemed promising, so much so that I contemplated adding a clause to our postnuptial agreement. If either of us had doubts, we could invoke the polygraph provision and both undergo retesting. Anastasia's Sunday morning texts were positive, so I gave her a call. "Good morning, Lonnie. How did you sleep?" "Much better. I'd appreciate your ideas. Set up appointments for both of us. I want to emphasize that you can trust me. I've prepared a set of questions for your polygraph examiner, and you can create your own for mine. Additionally, I've compiled a joint list for both examiners. If we both pass with flying colors, we can move past this. I've instructed our lawyer to draft a postnuptial agreement. Also include me in the marriage counseling, as there are some issues I need to address. What do you think?" Anastasia was tearful. "I'm so sorry for what I've done to you. Thank you for giving me a chance. You won't regret it. I love you." The following week passed quickly. Whenever I found a moment, I'd reach out to Anastasia. We had appointments scheduled for Saturday. The polygraph test and its results were obtained in less than an hour. We both responded to every question without any mistakes. There was a moment of shared amusement over one of the standard questions. "Do you always think about your spouse when you make love?" Both of us truthfully answered no. That night, I deactivated the security devices. With the reassurance of the polygraph results, we engaged in unprotected intercourse. 2 weeks later, we received completely negative STD results. We've been seeing a marriage counselor once a week for 12 weeks now. Everything seems to be going well so far. Having weighed the costs and benefits, I devised my plan for retaliation. Anastasia, no communication whatsoever with Elaine or Julianne today. Do you understand? Yes, crystal clear. Will you fill me in afterward? Afterward. This is solely my responsibility. And no physical harm, only humiliation. Best of luck with it. I truly care for you. I know. I love you too. I withdrew to my office and phoned Renee, who was prepared for what was to come. Dialing Anastasia's mother, I said, Elaine, it's Lonnie. How are you today? I'm well, Lonnie. What's the reason for your call? I was hoping you could join me for lunch today. I suppose I could. When and where? Well, I have a gift card for Mes Amies, the upscale French restaurant in the penthouse of the downtown Hilton, around noon. Dressed elegantly. Does that suit you? I'll be there. Excellent. See you at noon. Please keep this meeting confidential. You'll understand later. 1 target down, 1 to go. I arranged for Julianne to arrive at 12:15 p.m. I called Renee again to provide the details and also sent her photos of Elaine and Julianne. Around 10 a.m., Renee sent me several videos for my consideration. One of them captured the lunch meeting, and we would choose one as the trailer. I found amusement in the one I selected. By 12:25, Renee forwarded an email containing links to 3 videos. She had arranged for her associate, a young man named Marty, to meet my in-laws. Both the original footage and the edited versions were sent for my review. In the initial video, Elaine was dressed provocatively. Though I had never viewed her in that light, she was undeniably attractive and well-proportioned. Upon entering the lobby, Marty, who towered over her, held a sign bearing her name. She approached him. Elaine. Yes, that's me. Excellent, I'm here to escort you to the restaurant. He offered his arm, and Elaine linked hers with his. As they waited for the elevator, he leaned in to smell her neck. You smell lovely again. I'm so glad you could make it today. Elaine met his gaze, blushing. The elevator arrived, and as the doors closed, they ascended to the penthouse restaurant. Moments later, Marty emerged from the elevator, now holding a Julianne sign. If I found Elaine alluring, Julianne surpassed her effortlessly. When Marty extended his arm, Julianne not only linked hers, but also leaned into him. You smell lovely again. I'm so glad you could make it today. Julianne melted under the compliment, engaging in playful banter with Marty. As the elevator doors shut, the original footage concluded. I opened the edited videos and watched in astonishment. Both clips were nearly identical. They commenced with Marty extending his elbow. Clear audio accompanied with Marty saying, "You smell lovely again. I'm so glad you could make it today." As the elevator door shut, the scene transitioned to the chosen trailer. Marty emerged from a bedroom, hastily zipping up his pants. A bra lay on the bedroom floor. Catching sight of the cameraman, Marty exclaimed, "Hey, what are you doing?" and dashed toward the camera. The clip abruptly ended, lasting a mere 22 seconds. How much harm could such a brief video inflict? We were about to discover. With a few keystrokes, email number 1 was dispatched to Anastasia's father, Jeremy, with Elaine copied in. Simultaneously, email number 2 was sent to Julianne's husband, Chuck, with Julianne copied. Both emails bore the same message. Have you ever considered getting tested for sexually transmitted diseases? They are still at the Hilton. I anticipated Renee's call anxiously. True to form, she didn't disappoint, not even a minute later. Lonnie, it couldn't have gone any better. I'll send you the video. They were sitting together. Marty stopped by and informed them that you were delayed. They were laughing and giggling when their phones buzzed. They watched the video you sent. Elaine went absolutely crazy. Julianne tried to stand up and fainted. If I were you, I'd lay low for a while. Elaine didn't mince words. You're in deep trouble. I owe you big time, Renee. Send me your bill. After receiving the restaurant video from Renee, I opened my office door slightly and called for Anastasia. "Honey, your mother and sister are having some issues in their marriage." When Anastasia joined me, I remarked, "I suppose we'll see if their husbands pamper them and if their intimacy reaches new heights. Take a look at the emails and videos I just sent." As Anastasia watched, she gasped and muttered, "Oh my God. Did they really go into his room? Only they know for sure." I arranged the setup and had my private investigator produce the video. As far as I know, the young man only escorted them to the restaurant. Are you ready to see their reaction when they watch the emailed video? Yes, show me. Anastasia's nipples were stiff, and she laughed so hard tears formed in her eyes. She looked at me, removed her sweatshirt, and let her bra fall to the floor. Her sweatpants and panties followed suit. "Thank you. It seems like Mom wants to take you down. Now come down here and claim your reward." It was as intense as any reconciliation intimacy we'd ever shared. Following her passionate ride on top bringing me to my first climax, I reciprocated by pleasuring her until she reached her peak. We cuddled for a moment before she eagerly attended to my arousal, using her mouth and hands until I was ready for another round. Transitioning to a different position, Anastasia assumed the doggy style, a favorite of mine where I enjoy playing with her breasts. As she stimulated herself, experiencing tremors of pleasure, I reached climax again before rolling aside. Anastasia brought herself to another climax with her fingers as we lay together, interrupted by incessant phone calls. Reality intruded as we faced the consequences of our actions. We cuddled until I was ready for more. After an extended session, I released my third load into Anastasia's eager center. The doorbell interrupted us, revealing Elaine and Jeremy, whose tense demeanor hinted at trouble. "What's your dad's number?" "Wait, let me grab my phone." Moments later, the ringtone filled the air as we watched Jeremy retrieve his phone. "Hey, we're at your place." "When are you getting here?" "It's Lonnie's dad." "Before we meet, ask Elaine about what they talked Anastasia into. I'll fill you in later." I ended the call, and we observed as Jeremy turned to address Elaine. Elaine's posture slouched, and then Jeremy launched into an intense verbal attack. He confronted her face to face, his eyes blazing with fury. After his outburst, he stormed off and got into his truck, locking the doors before driving away, while Elaine struggled to open the passenger door. She stood there in tears as Jeremy sped off. Afterward, we got dressed and sat in the kitchen, exchanging texts and voicemails from all parties involved. It became apparent that not only had they misjudged my response, but they also knew very little about their own husbands' reactions. How long do we let Jeremy and Chuck endure this? Wait, I'm thinking of texting Chuck to ask Julianne what she did to you. And I followed through with that plan. Sent. But shouldn't we let them know their wives didn't cheat? They didn't? You said they only went to the restaurant, but remember when you first saw the video, you asked, did they actually go into his room? Did they call me and clarify that it was just a joke? With a lowered head, she replied, "No. All right. Here's what we'll do. Let's meet them for dinner tomorrow night. I don't ever want those two women in my house again. We'll go to some pizza place." "But Lonnie, I interrupted her with a raised hand. "This discussion is concluded." We arrived at the Pizza Hut parking lot well ahead of schedule. I had a document for Jeremy and Chuck containing the contact details of the individuals Anastasia, and I consulted for polygraph tests, STD tests, and marriage counseling. Another sheet contained the questions we had prepared for the polygraph test. Just to be cautious, I brought along some pepper spray, though it might be overkill. While we waited, we ordered pizzas. Jeremy and Elaine arrived, their expressions unrentable, and sat opposite Anastasia. Shortly after, Chuck and Julianne joined, making it a group of 6. The pizzas arrived while the waitress took drink orders. Dig in, everyone. The pizzas are on us. Once the drinks were served, I began my prepared speech. Apologies will never suffice for what you ladies did. Anastasia and I are determined to move forward. We've undergone polygraph tests, STD screenings, drafted a post-nuptial agreement, and started marriage counseling. I've included all the contact numbers on these sheets. I handed copies to Jeremy and Chuck. I recommend you follow our lead. Here's the set of questions we provided to the polygraph examiners. Jeremy and Chuck each received a copy. I observed a worried expression on Julianne's face. Julianne, you seem distressed, not keen on undergoing a lie detector test. The glance Chuck directed at Julianne conveyed a fierce determination. You will definitely be taking the test. There wasn't much casual conversation that evening. Whenever anyone broached the topic of that day, I deflected, saying, I won't be answering any questions. If you're experiencing difficulties in your marriage, I suggest you follow the steps Anastasia and I took to rebuild ours. I settled our bill and got ready to depart. One more thing, Elaine and Julianne, I never want to see you in my house again. Anastasia may attend your family events, but don't be surprised if this marks the last time we're in the same room together. A week later, Chuck called to provide his temporary address. Julianne's polygraph had yielded negative results. We refrained from asking for details, and he didn't offer any. My earlier bravado concerning family gatherings vanished when I found Jeremy standing at my doorstep. Lonnie, I heard what you said about family gatherings, but it would mean a lot if you and Anastasia could join us for breakfast on Sunday morning. I can't fully appreciate this victory unless you're there. We both passed the polygraph. I can only imagine the ordeal you endured. It turned my stomach upside down, and I only had to endure a few days of it. Please join us on Sunday. With a handshake, I was welcomed back into the family. Sunday turned out to be enjoyable. However, Jeremy made sure to subtly remind Elaine of her past actions by insisting she wear the same dress from the lunch video. Elaine's usual authoritative demeanor was noticeably subdued. Her position as the household matriarch had been challenged, with Jeremy now asserting dominance. Whenever Elaine tried to speak up, Jeremy would politically silence her. Elaine, our guests are already well aware of your intellectual prowess. Why don't you just sit there and grace us with your presence? Anastasia then offered, Dad, would you like to watch the original video? Could I? I reviewed my emails, I began, and said, Here you go, Jeremy. After this, I'll show you the trailers I had to choose from. As we watched the various trailers, Jeremy remarked, I'm glad you didn't choose this one. I might have been tempted to grab my gun and finish her off when she got home. He was referring to a scene where Marty appeared with his back to the camera, holding a handful of hair stretched towards his rear end. At first glance, it seemed like he was receiving a blowjob, but it turned out he was holding a wig that matched both Elaine and Julianne's hair color. Elaine finally broke her silence. Can I see it too? After viewing it, she said, Lonnie, thank you for not choosing that one. You definitely outsmarted us. We deserved it. I'm really sorry. I simply nodded in response. Here's one more for you to look at. This shows both of them receiving the emails that day. Jeremy let out a hearty laugh. Now, dear, you didn't really mean it when you said you wanted Lonnie dead, did you? Elaine smugly shrugged her shoulders. Maybe. Later, when we returned home, Anastasia and I indulged in an afternoon filled with sexual bliss. Chuck ended his marriage with Julianne and cited the adultery clause in their prenuptial agreement. They sold their house, and now Julianne resides in a one-bedroom apartment. Chuck has attended some of our neighborhood potluck dinners. Elaine maintains regular communication with Anastasia. If Jeremy extends an invitation, we participate in family gatherings. The first time Julianne attended, I was uncertain about what to expect. Jeremy ensured we were all informed. His condition for Julianne's invitation was that she wear her Mesme's outfit. Despite her objections, she appeared radiant as ever. Foolish, perhaps, but undeniably beautiful. To me, Anastasia holds equal beauty. During the conversation, Jeremy remarked, Lonnie, be grateful that Anastasia only pretended to have an affair out of love for you. Seems we can't say the same for her promiscuous sister, can we? Julianne left the table in tears. I felt a sense of pride that Jeremy had the courage to speak the truth. Julianne has yet to offer a sincere apology. Jeremy and I openly discuss my job, and as an engineer, he offers valuable insights and questions that I bring back to the office. He still limits Elaine's participation in conversations, allowing Anastasia newfound freedom to express herself at family gatherings. Anastasia has devoted much time to her poetry, publishing several pieces online and learning to navigate the harsh criticism of the public. Though their plan didn't unfold as expected, their little scheme ultimately strengthened our bond. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.